Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here once again with another video on just this upcoming DC Universe coming our way. So heading in to this new DC Universe reboot under James Gunn, one thing I'm pretty sure we are all looking forward to is of course the new heroes that will be showcased or new takes on heroes that we're used to seeing, like a Superman for example, which will be kicking it all off. But with heroes, of course, comes their villains, and that will be a very interesting thing to see as well, because when it comes to characters like a Superman, like a Batman, like a Flash, or like the Flash, they have a large rogues gallery for each of them, where sometimes villains aren't given time to shine when they do show up, or just any time to shine at all. But with villains come the big ones, the big threats, the ones that are going to be a pain in the ass for not just a Superman, a Batman, or a Flash to deal with, but everyone else in the DC universe, even if they do come together to fight it. And we got maybe our first tease at one of the ongoing big threats with the DC universe in episode 4 of Creature Commandos, that being Gorilla Grodd. Obviously, Grodd originates as a villain of Barry Allen's Flash, but like some villains of Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Green Lantern, that villain can stretch to other parts of the DC universe, or just the world as a whole, and be a threat to it and, groups like the Justice League. So could this be the case for Gorilla Grodd, as well as some other potential villains as well? Well, in this video, I wanted to talk about Grodd in this upcoming DCU in a way, as well as some other villains that I could see James Gunn tapping into and using as big threats for all the other heroes in this DCU to take on that might not have been even just used or even thought about being used previously in at least the previous DCEU, but just in live action in general, because now there's this platform to do it, but also someone that might want to tap into that part of the comics. But of course, throughout the video, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on this and the, your thoughts on these villains that I do bring up, as well as any other, maybe obscure villains that could be presented as big threats that you'd like to see in this upcoming DCU, whether it is in a film or maybe even one of the TV shows as a bit of an ongoing threat episode by episode. Let me know. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, drop a like, takes 2 seconds. So let's just start with Grodd. I think it's just the easiest one because it's the sort of the catalyst for making this video. Now, with Gorilla Grodd, as I said, we do see him in episode 4 of Creature Commandos in that like apocalyptic flash forward. That is the future for the events that are said to happen. Highly unlikely that they will happen and that things will be prevented. And episode 5 of Creature Commandos, which I actually written this script out before that came out, but I watched that about 2 hours before making this video, and they make it seem like that apocalyptic vision could have been a load of arse, but not confirming it at the same time. But regardless, it is interesting to see Gorilla Grodd in that vision. And by the way, it's been confirmed that that's Grodd. And it seems that he might be controlling or mind controlling the Princess of Pakolistan by the looks of it. Maybe he isn't, but there is just the possibility that that's the case. But also there is a possibility that the princess is just messed up and maybe Grodd is mind controlling the soldiers in her army, or at least maybe anyone else that they feel the need to control to join them to have the power that they do have. But moving past this, Gorilla Grodd in the proper DCU going forward, is there possibility, might I say, for a large role there? Because really with Grodd, he can be a massive threat, even if it's just by himself or used as an ally by another larger threat. It's like, hey, we're going to bring Grodd in, or we're going to, I got Grodd under my wing and we can use his abilities and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be shocked. Now, if you remember in Peacemaker Season 1, there's the episode where the gorilla shows up there. That is another gorilla from the comics from memory. But when he showed up, I was like, this feels like if Gunn had all the control or all the resources he wanted in Peacemaker, he probably would have made that Gorilla Grodd. It just felt like that would have been the case, but it wasn't. It was just some other gorilla who I'm pretty sure was also from the comics. So it's definitely a villain I could see Gunn wanting to use. Now, the big thing with it is that do you use Grodd in a massive way, or do you just introduce him as a Flash villain? Because that's the big thing when you use any villain and their initial association within the comics. Do you bring them in? It's like using the Joker. Like, I know Grodd's not on the level of the Joker, but just as an example, using like a Joker, like a Two-Face, like a whoever it might be, and them just showing up as a bigger threat in like a Justice League movie or someone else's film as this larger DCU villain. Like, some might take it the wrong way or not really like it too much. For me, I think Grodd is one that I think can expand beyond that point where he doesn't have to be introduced as a Flash villain. Maybe there could just be a thing where for some reason he has a bigger hate towards the Flash than any of the other heroes in the DCU. But I think you can bring him in any way, but it's definitely a villain I could see, not Grodd, Maybe Grodd. Maybe Grodd is mind controlling Gunn, but it's a villain I could definitely see Gunn using. The next one I want to talk about is Brainiac. Yes, it's a bit obvious, but Brainiac is a character that people have wanted to see specifically in a Superman film, but just a live action DC film for a while now. And while there are rumors and theories about Brainiac maybe being in James Gunn's Superman film, there isn't anything concrete to prove it as of yet. However, this is a villain I think Gunn would be very tempted to use, especially if there is a way to build it up to not just maybe him being on Earth for longer than Superman, but his journey to Earth and what he did on that journey to other alien races. In the comics, there is even a point where Lex Luthor has Brainiac held prisoner, and in the trailer for Gunn's Superman film, we do see Superman locked in that cube-like prison where he punches it to get out of it, and there are, well, at least it appears to be, other metahumans and other beings around him. So maybe Brainiac in a weaker form is in this prison as well. That would be an interesting reveal if they went down that path. But there's also the possibility that we know that Lanterns is going to be introducing a big threat within this DCU, within their show. And it'd be weird to have Brainiac, I guess, appear firstly in a Green Lantern-centric show, but then again, Brainiac comes from space or another planet, cosmic lens. I guess it would make sense to some degree. But I could see Gunn using Brainiac in a bit more of a, I don't want to say nuanced way, but at least in not just he shows up and he just wants to destroy Earth or do something to Earth. I feel like there could be a lot of build-up that Gunn might want to use with him. Though Gunn isn't really known as a plot guy, and there's none of his films have really been overly plot heavy, I could see him maybe wanting to sprinkle Brainiac in and up throughout the DC universe, but I don't know, we'll have to wait and see there. Next up is the center. Now, I am only really including this as this is the heavily rumored big threat early in Gunn's DC universe, and apparently will be revealed or at least hinted to in the Lantern show on HBO. Now, once again, not confirmed, but Gunn has more than once referenced the Silver Age being a big influence on his DC universe, which is evident in the trailer for Superman and the more out there sci-fi elements on display there. But the center is otherwise known as Dinosaur Island, which might sound more familiar and was also featured in the New Frontiers series in the comics of DC where it debuted, but of course that was made into an animated film later on, which maybe could be where the whole story here sounds a bit familiar, as you may have watched it. But that whole New Frontier story is set around the bridge, or the crossing over, between the Golden Age into the Silver Age. So it has elements throughout it that I think Gunn likes and wouldn't mind adapting in certain ways into live action, whether that is the characters specifically, or just the overall scenarios. But the center as a threat is a mind-controlling one that can control a mass amount of people and beings at one time. So it's not really just direct mind control, it's okay, now I'm mind controlling everyone. So you can see why it would be a big threat that Gunn would find fairly interesting to use. But it's one where, there could be a message or theme attached to it, because the center in the comics at the very least had been on Earth well before humans, millions of years before, pretty much since the inception of Earth, and was not just a witness to the growth and development and I guess prospering of the human race, but also the destruction that they brought with them as well, whether it's just through the environment, but of course war and weaponry, with the events of World War II being the catalyst for the center fighting back, at the very least, in the comics. I don't know if you do it now. So if the center is used, it would be interesting to see if they use World War II as the reason for the center going back against humanity, or something in the present day. Not it's not like war is not present nowadays. Obviously, it's a situation still nowadays, so you could easily set in the present day if necessary, but maybe you could start the point where the center starts to do stuff in World War II, and then it just builds up throughout time to the present day. The only issue, I guess, to a degree, with using the center is the fact that Gunn did use Starro in, the Suicide Squad, so there's some similarities there. But I don't know. He might just be I don't care. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. But then again, Peacemaker had a very similar thing where it was the aliens that took over went into the heads of people, wasn't it, or something? So yeah, maybe he's got a thing with DC and mind control or taking over bodies. So maybe he might have no issue doing it again. I don't know. The second last villain I have here is Mongol. Now, Mongol is a character I 100% think Gunn has written down on a whiteboard or post-it note somewhere in his office. Of course, we did see Mongol, who is Mongol's daughter in the Suicide Squad, her dying, I think when the helicopter crashed, I think it was that. And based off Creature Commandos, most of the events of the Suicide Squad, especially that beach scene at the very least, seems to be canon for the most part. Mongol, of course, comes from the planet known as Warworld, and while I don't think we would have anything where we'd go there with at least one or more heroes going to Warworld for an adventure, I could see something where Mongol comes to Earth, whether that is, that's to try and turn Earth into a new world, a war world. I know it's not really a tongue twister. I'm just an idiot. Or maybe searching for his daughter Mongol, because he might not know that she died. But then again, there might be the thing where she was exiled to Earth. I'm not too sure if they said that in the Suicide Squad, why she was on Earth. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. I'm forgetting. I'm not too sure. I haven't watched that movie in a while. Now, Mongol isn't from the Silver Age in the comics, but he was introduced shortly after the end of the Silver Age in the early 80s. And if Gunn was reading Superman comics when he was a kid and a teenager, which is around that time, Mongol would have been a pretty big villain for him and a fairly interesting one as well. Mongol is, of course, the cause for the very well-known story involving the Black Mercy with Superman, with that plant being used on other characters as well. Most well known, and that was a victim of it was Superman. And while I don't know if there would be a straight up adaptation of that Black Mercy storyline, if you have read or seen adaptations of this, like it was in the Superman animated series, I think from memory, was it the Justice League show? I think it was the Superman animated series, but there's been adaptations of it. This gives Kal-El an induced reality where he is his current age, but in a reality where he is on Krypton as if it never exploded and lived a very happy life there. So I could see Gunn really wanting to tap into doing an adaptation of that in some way, but not making it the whole movie. So like it's maybe the catalyst for what happens. Like we start this movie off living on Krypton. It's like, what the hell's happening here? And then we see what's actually happening with Superman and the story continues on from there. So I think that's probably the most likely situation about seeing that Black Mercy storyline being used, and then maybe mix it with another story, or being used using an inspiration from another story in the comics, so you can involve Mongol, involve that Black Mercy storyline, but then also maybe involve another villain as well that feels appropriate in that in that realm, if you want to put it. And the final villain to talk about that I just feel like Gunn would really want to use, and it's not really a villain, it's villains, and that's the Legion of Doom. I mean, come on, the Legion of Doom. Now, this did not originate in the comics. It is a thing that did not originate in the comics. Of course, this debuted attached to the Super Friends characters back in the 60s, of course, that being the Silver Age era of the comics. But I could see Gunn really wanting to do the Legion of Doom and setting it up throughout various films and shows. And almost, I know it sounds like, oh, Pagey, mate, that's really cringe, or like, no, that's a bit on the nose. But for some reason, I'd love it. It feels such like so corny, but I think it would work. And it's almost like the reverse of the Marvel movies leading up to the Avengers, where you had Nick Fury recruiting the Avengers and putting them together. I think it'd be really funny if you had Lex Luthor doing it. So it's like almost parodying to an extent the Nick Fury stuff, but with Lex Luthor, and he's piecing together these villains in some way. I think that would be fairly interesting. So he's the leader of the Legion of Doom in the Super Friends thing. So I think it'd be funny if you did that and built it up. So you could take it in a very serious direction, but at the end of the day, if you do Silver Age, you got to lean into something like the goofiness around it, and I think that's one way you could lean into it and have a bit of fun with it as well. But the biggest challenge here, I think, would be making the villains as interesting, if not more interesting, than the heroes in certain films. So when they do come together, it is this cool event. Oh, I get to see this villain, team up with this villain. I love both of them together in that movie. And then it's even cooler when you have Legion of Doom versus, hypothetically, the Justice League or another group of villains, and you get these team up sort of things and a rematch and stuff like that. I think that'd be really, really cool. But also, if it was a Legion of Doom, I'd want 6 or 7 of the best villains you've done on the thing in the universe so far. So you'd want obviously your Lex Luthor. You probably want, I don't know if you do Joker, but you probably want a decent sized Batman villain. Of course, you'd probably want, I guess you'd use Cheetah as a Wonder Woman villain. With the Flash, it's usually either Grodd or Captain Cold. Though, would you use Reverse Flash? It depends what you're doing there, I guess. But I think the build up to that could not only just be fun to watch and be really cool, but just also very satisfying to come the end of it. But this could be 10 years from now as well, or just not happen at all. But I really like the idea of it. And also, I think using someone it's Darkseid or it's this, have some fun with it. I'd rather than just try and do something different, have some fun with it, but also stay in that sort of that sandbox, if you want to call it as well. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on this stuff. What villains would you like to see that I did not mention? Do you have any really good ideas in regards to sort of some ones that we haven't seen yet that you think would be cool, at least in regards to the cinematic one? They might have been in a TV show, but in regards to being a main threat in a cinematic movie and stuff like that, let me know in the comments as well as your opinions on my ones. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.